Look a little washed out tonight, I think. Maybe I should turn down these lights. Hold on. Maybe that's better. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to wait for some more people to join us. And I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the chat, so let me check that out here. Usually it pops up here on the side. I can see some people are here, but if you're sending me messages on Facebook or YouTube, I'm not seeing them, and I'm really not sure why. Usually they pop right up here on my Restream dashboard, but I'm not seeing them tonight. So this is very strange. See if I can find them. Oh, now I see them. Okay, excellent. Took a little while for me to figure out where these were popping up, but now I'm seeing everybody. Great. That's great. So, how does everyone like my hair tonight? This was a major endeavor getting this hair up here like this. So I'll just show it to you a little bit, show you a little bit what it looks like. So it's kind of a, wild hairdo tonight I have going, just to have some fun here tonight with costuming. Oh, here we go. There's a better place for me to see this chat. Okay. Now I can see a little better what's going on. Um, so tonight, welcome to Mrs. Q Live from the 18th century. I am Mrs. Q, and tonight we're going to talk about some political cartoons and social cartoons from the late 18th century that appeared in England and the colonies. And we're going to look at a whole bunch of different things. We'll look at some serious political cartoons. We'll look at some wartime cartoons. We're going to look at some social satire cartoons, and we're going to look at some cartoons making fun of women's hair and clothes. So I have a whole bunch of things to talk about tonight from the 18th century. I hope you're all well. Love the hair. Thank you. I don't know if any of you saw it on social media, but I had a picture of this wig and what it looked like before I styled it. It was a 2-day adventure with lots of curling irons and burning fingers, but in the end, and lots of hairspray. And in the end, it came out really, really great. One of the best wig styling jobs I've done in a long time. So I hope everybody is well. I should pick a year. Let's say it's after the American Revolution, because I'm going to show you some cartoons that took place at the end of the Revolutionary War. So let's say we're in New York City. It's 1783, and we have all returned after the war, and we're all settling in to see what sort of new nation is going to come about now that we have finally got out from under the wing of Great Britain. And Mr. Q is somewhere around. I'm not sure. He's doing whatever Mr. Q does when I speak to you on Thursday nights. Whatever the gentlemen are doing, he's probably off with the gentlemen playing cards and, just enjoying his free time. And I thought I would show you some depictions of the way we have been portrayed during this unfortunate time of trouble with our former mother country. I think I can call it our former mother country now. So let's start out. I have a whole lot of these to show you tonight, and some of them are insulting to us. Some of them are insulting to England, and some of them are just, downright funny. So let me move over here and see what we have first. All right, so this is the macaroni. I don't know in your time if you understand the meaning of the word macaroni in my time. So this is a macaroni. And I'm sure you know the song, Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. So what does that mean? Well, that is a song that our British friends made up in New England to make fun of the people there. So they would call them Yankees in New England and, like a doodle, like a country fool. So Yankee Doodle went to town riding on his pony. He stuck a feather in his hat. I have some feathers up here. He stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. That is a macaroni. A macaroni is a gentleman who goes through all sorts of airs to have his, look at the hair. I think my hair looks crazy. Look at that hair. We're going to be looking at some hair cartoons tonight. Look at that hair. And you can see he has a makeup table over here. Lots of fancy clothes and makeup and shoes, buckles on his shoes and ruffles on his sleeves and everything. So this is a macaroni, a gentleman who goes to all lengths to be the greatest in court or social European fashion of the time. So what the song is saying is that Yankee Doodle, this poor country farmer, goes to town riding on his pony, and he puts a feather in his hat, and he thinks it makes him this. He thinks, that is all dressed up and ready to go to town, that's the greatest thing. So sort of an insult to us, right? That this is what a macaroni is. And I'm going to show you some pictures of how other ways they viewed us and used the term macaroni. So let's see what this is really pretty funny. I've never seen any gentleman actually dressed like this. This might be an English or maybe a French or European thing. Certainly, our American gentlemen never dressed like this. But just to clarify the term macaroni for you, for some of the pictures that we are about to see. So let's look at what's next in the stack. So here we have a new method of macaroni making here in the colonies. So, wow, so a lot going on here. You might have seen some of these. So this is a derogatory portrayal of our friends in the Sons of Liberty. And you have here some poor guy, or portrayed to be a poor suffering man who has just been tarred and feathered and this gentleman has a pot of tea here. So he's probably been tarred and feathered for buying the East India tea and helping to bail out that corrupt, disgraceful company in the time of the Tea Act 10 years ago. So here's a gentleman, he's tarred and feathered. They're about to hang him. We have the noose up there, about to hang him. And look at the two members of the Sons of Liberty, how ridiculously they're dressed. So this is, again, the colonial macaroni. So here they have on their shoes with their nice little buckles and their breeches. Oh, look, they have their colored vests on and brightly colored jackets. And this gentleman has a 45 on his hat. And he has a nice big bow. So this is what makes them macaroni. The 45 on the hat is a reference to our protests prior to the Revolutionary War concerning the number 45 and our friend in the Parliament, John Wilkes. MP Wilkes, you might remember, was a big supporter of us here in the colonies, and he himself found himself in jail for issue number 45 of his newspaper, the North Briton. So he became very popular, and the number 45 became popular. And here, our Sons of Liberty might say to to Wilkes and the number 45 when they protested. So that's the meaning of the 45. And of course, the gentlemen of England all looked down as John Wilkes as, you know, a debatable character and a bit of a lower type gentleman. But John Wilkes was very crafty and very smart, and he stood for more rights for the people of England and for the people of the colonies. He belonged to that political party we call Whigs. So here we have some macaroni making in the colonies, making fun of us a little bit now, then. I don't know how much they're laughing at us now that we've beaten them. I think maybe by the end of our presentation, we'll see some cartoons where they are, let's say, singing a different tune about us. Yes, someone said Wilkes and 45, exactly. Okay, who do we have next? Oh, wonderful, the Patriotic Barber of New York. Look at this. So our antics here in the colonies, although they tried to pooh-pooh them and make it seem like they were inconsequential and meaningless and that we had no power, well, it seemed that our activities were big enough to make it into the British papers and also for very complex and expensive engravings about them to be made. So maybe what we were doing wasn't so insignificant at all. This depicts the Patriotic Barber of New York, and this is the barber over here. And you can see that he is removing a customer from his shop, from the chair. The customer still has a towel around his neck. He's only half shaved, his wig is still off, and they're pushing him out the door. And why are they doing this? Because the barber is a member of the Sons of Liberty, and the patron was a British soldier. And some sort of difference occurred in the shop in which the Sons of Liberty, you can see them here, all came for him, and the barber threw him out of the shop. Now, if you can take a closer look at the faces of the guys looking in the door and of the barber and the gentleman in the back, you notice they all have these grotesque faces. And they preferred to portray us with these grotesque faces as a way of degrading us. We'll see, I think I have some more of these in here, but you'll often see members of the Sons of Liberty portrayed this way, as demonic, as ugly, as grotesque, because the last thing they wanted was for people to join up with the Sons of Liberty against the corrupt government in England. Please excuse me. So they would depict the Sons of Liberty in a manner that made you not want to associate with them or associate with anyone who knew them. And this was a method of dividing the people at that time. So if you thought the Sons of Liberty were just horrible, demeaning and degrading and violent savages, you would never want to associate with them or anyone who did. And this is what some of these were meant to do, to divide us. Of course, being printed in England, they're meant simply to degrade us. But here, they're meant to divide us. You might see some interesting things. There are some wigs up on the wall. There are some portraits. The portraits are of a couple of gentlemen in the House of Lords who were Whigs and supported our cause. And down here, you see there are wig boxes, and the names on the wig boxes correspond to some of our leaders of the New York Sons of Liberty. So a wonderful cartoon or portrayal of the Patriotic Barber of New York. And this, by the way, was a real incident. I'm not making it up. This was a real incident. Someone says they named half a town after him. Indeed, they did. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, or people here say Wilkes-Barre for John Wilkes, but Isaac Barré was the other gentleman. So John Wilkes and Isaac Barré, who was Swiss French, another supporter of the colonies. It was from a speech that Member of Parliament or Colonel Barré gave that gave us the name Sons of Liberty. Right? Prior to that, the Sons of Liberty were the committees of correspondence. And in a debate with Prime Minister Lord North, Lord North had got up and talked about how the colonies, how we were successful and had everything we had because we were so well nurtured by the Parliament, which everyone knew was crazy talk. Everyone knew that was just ridiculous that they nurtured us. And Colonel Barre got up and said so. And he said, the colonies nurtured by us, why, they've been ignored by us to their benefit. He said, because we haven't been there to interfere with them and bother them. He said, the true sons of liberty are the men who have left these lands and gone to that hostile place to build what they have now. And the speech was quite a sensation. And the Sons of Liberty took their name from that speech from Colonel Isaac Barre. So a little bit about that if you didn't know it. I have a bunch of messages. Let's see. Chatham, that is Chatham on the right. Somebody has a really good eye. That is Chatham or William Pitt the Elder, as he was called. And someone says, of course, people today don't portray their political enemies that way. I don't know how you're doing it in your time, but wait till we get to some more of these. I hope you are still as clever and eloquent as we are in my time. So that is a very good eye, someone recognizing Earl of Chatham or Lord Chatham, William Pitt, a great man. And who do we have next? Let's see what I have next here. Oh, I'm sure this is not happening in your time. Please tell me it is not. This is from 1774, the time of the Tea Act. And you might remember that the Tea Act was an attempt to bail out the corrupt and bankrupt East India Company at the expense of the colonies. Well, one of the things that we were talking about at that time was how corrupt the members of parliament were, and that the members of parliament had voted for the Tea Act to bail out the East India Company because they had all received political donations or bribes to do so. And although everyone laughed at us, well, look at this engraving from London. We didn't have the ability to do something like this at this time. Or you'll see our political cartoons are much more primitive than these. So when you see something like this, it was printed by a London printer. And what do we have here? We have a member of parliament taking his oath against bribes. Oh, what's happening over there? He's taking a bribe at the same time. And it's not clear in this reproduction, but up here on the wall is a list of bribes and their prices corresponding to whether you're paying someone in the House of Lords or the Commons. So here we have some corruption depiction of parliamentary corruption in the 1770s. Well, I'm sure you haven't descended to this in your time, have you? I hope not. So let's move on, shall we? It's one of my favorites. Oh, and let's move on to some wardrobe satire. Hair. As you can see, I have some big hair tonight, but some hair during that time was much bigger than the hair I even have now. This is actually quite moderate as far as hairstyles went. So ladies had hairstyles with all sorts of decorations and things in them, flowers, birds, little miniature houses and things. So here's a little joke about that. It's called Miss American Headdress and the Battle of Bunkers Hill. And you can see the whole battle taking place here in her hair. I don't know if anyone went to the extreme to depict this in their hair, but this is quite funny and a good play on the elaborate hairstyles of the 1770s. And I think the next one might be another hairstyle, and it is. And these are some gentlemen shooting birds that have a nest up in the hair. So some more comedy about our fashions at that time. I really like this one. Although if you look, this gentleman has some pretty big hair himself. So if we look at him, we can assume that this is a macaroni with this lady here with her massive hair with the bird's nest in it. So this is quite funny, and they're shooting at the birds. I hope you still have a good sense of humor in your time and that you can joke about, ladies' hair and ladies' fashions and what ladies do, because we really have a good time looking at these and laughing. Well, here we have the bum shop. I'm not wearing one tonight, If I had, I would show it to you, but I am not wearing a bum cushion tonight. You might know that all of the different dresses have different shapes. And to maintain the proper shape in your dress, you need a bum cushion. And you can see them all up here on the wall. The split bum or the split rump. So you have seen the ladies with the lovely dresses that taper in the back, and then they come down to a point and they burst out on the sides. Well, that is the split rump, is for that. And you see some that go like this one all the way around to the sides, and that's for a big, even full look from the back around to the side. So we have this one, and we have somebody with a very big one over here. We have a little dog playing. We have, oh, I'm not sure what this is. It looks like a rat. And over here we have a little dog. Someone has their little poodle with them. And we have skinny ladies and we have fat ladies and all kinds of ladies, because in the 18th century, when we dress, our foundation garments shape us properly for the fashion of the time. So if you need some padding in the butt and in the sides, you have it here. If you need some padding in the top, well, you put some fabric in here and push everything up so you get proper padding and cleavage on the top. And of course, you fix your hair. And by the time you go out, no one has any idea what you really look like under your clothes. And we might say that we have had a fair number of gentlemen who've been quite surprised when they saw what they got when they married and their new wives undressed. And that would be the classes that would dress like this. Of course, the ladies who work for a living don't wear all of this, and it's much easier to tell what they really look like. But for the ladies who all dress up, there's quite a bit of disguising going on everywhere. You don't know what's real hair, what's a hairpiece, what's a wig, what's the stuffing, what is pulling the waist into a nice, beautiful V shape. Who knows what's under here? Only Mr. Q knows what's under here. And let's see what we have next. Oh, this is another picture just of ladies shopping for fabric. And here you have a milliner's shop. So here's all the ladies all out looking at fabric. So you can see they're all dressed. They have on their beautiful hats, their dresses. Someone has a muff. It must be winter. And here, here's a little child and a dog again. Some hat boxes. Oh, I'm sorry. A milliner is a hat. Excuse me. It's a hat maker, not a fabric seller. So here you have the ladies in the hat shop. They're all looking at hats and all trying on their hats. Of course, I'm inside, so I'm not wearing a hat. I do have a nice collection of hats here. Let me show you one. Some of you may have seen this, one of my favorite hats, right? Oh, look at this. It looks very nice over this hair, doesn't it? Well, oh, if I could get it on there evenly. Little off to the side. So hats, a very important part of a lady's wardrobe, and one of the many that I have here. No, we have to pull up the hair a little bit. Didn't want to smash it down like that. Let's get some height back. All right. So, Mr. Q calls my new hairstyle the Bride of Frankenstein hairstyle. Is he awful, Mr. Q? I don't know if that's funny or not. And what do we have next? Oh, Gentleman Forging stays. So it's the steel stays for the steel shape. Now, truly, we do not wear stays made out of forged steel. Really. The stays are made out of very thick and heavy fabric, like a canvas type of fabric. And there's boning in the stays to help the shape. As you can see a little bit, I'll back up a little bit here. There's boning in the stays to help the shape. Right? So you can see that a little bit here. The stays, the boning could be made of whalebone, and it might be made of steel, the boning, but the stays themselves are not forged out of steel and put on us to keep us in our proper shape. And you can see here, there's a nice hairdo happening over here as well, an impressive hairdo. And the thing I always like in these pictures are the tiny, tiny feet. who has tiny feet like that? All of these fashion prints, the ladies all have these impossibly tiny feet, so tiny you could not possibly even stand on them. So we've this perpetuating this idea that we must all have these little teeny weeny dainty feet in order to be fashionable and beautiful. And you should see ladies cramming their feet into these ridiculously small shoes, something I don't do, something I might have done when I was younger. I don't do anymore. So here we have a lady getting fitted for her stays. And oh, by the way, although our stays are not made of steel, it is gentlemen who make our stays. So the stay makers are gentlemen. So when we go to get fitted for our stays and to buy stays, it will be men who make them. I know that sounds maybe odd to you that in a time when we have so much modesty, that the men would be making our undergarments. But remember, the stays do go on over, this little dress. I have a little dress or chemise on with stays over that. And then this jacket you see is on top of that. So it's not like they're really touching us, our naked bodies or anything. We have a little dress, a little chemise on over our body that the stays then go on top of. What do we have? We have stays. Oh, and here we have, I don't know if you can see it up here, it says quack, quack, quack. And we have two quack doctors fighting in the street over who's a better doctor. So we have the two doctors are fighting here, their wives are fighting, their cats are fighting, and their little doggies are fighting as well. So we have the idea that we have here in the street two supposed doctors who are nothing more than charlatans, thus the two ducks and the quack, quack, quack up on the top, who are arguing over who is a better doctor and who is taking more patients into their practice. And their wives are having a nice fight here, pulling their hair and this, and the cats have their backs all up, and the two doggies are up on their hind legs fighting as well. So a little bit of joking, and the title of the piece is Mutual Accusation, that they're each accusing the other of being frauds. So quite amusing and funny. I like this one quite a lot also. Let's see, we have the doctors. Oh, I'm sorry, I went backwards. The stays, doctors. Oh, dentistry. This looks pretty frightening. So here is a gentleman getting a tooth pulled. You notice he has both of his legs on the chair to anchor himself, and he's sitting on this gentleman's back. While I don't know if this is his wife, probably is fainting in the background watching this whole procedure. So a little spoof on dentistry. That looks pretty scary and awful, doesn't it? So dentistry in the 18th century. Oh, and now some politics. He had some fun. Let's look at some things that are a little bit more serious. So over here, the funeral march for the Stamp Act. Do you remember the Stamp Act? Oh, it's almost 20 years ago now, the Stamp Act, a tax on paper to help pay for the French and Indian War and to pay for the troops that remained here after the French and Indian War. The Stamp Act was a miserable failure on the part of the Crown, and that we in the colonies all united and we refused to abide by it. Not only did we refuse to abide by it, we also refused to conduct any trade with them. So no more raw materials for their factories and no more buying goods from them. And let's see, that only took us 3 months of flexing our business or economic might to get the Stamp Act repealed. And this is a beautiful color engraving about the funeral for the Stamp Act. And you can see the beginning of the Stamp Act is being carried into the tomb. There are two skulls up there, some flags, and these are the members of Parliament in a row who all supported the Stamp Act. Here's the little coffin over here. And my favorite part, I bet you can guess, my favorite part of this picture, which I shouldn't say as a lady, but it is quite funny, is the little dog relieving himself on the gentleman's leg, showing what is thought of the Stamp Act. Now, there were people in England who thought the Stamp Act was an incredibly bad idea. Lord Chatham, or Earl of Chatham, William Pitt among them. Someone mentioned him earlier. And in the background, you can see the ships are all loading up with goods ready to be sent back to America after the death of the Stamp Act. So a beautiful picture showing, well, the death of the Stamp Act and embarrassing all of the gentlemen who supported it. And this is another good one depicting the state of things during the Revolutionary War. And of course, you know, the lion is Britain, right? It's the British lion engaging four powers. And these are all of the powers who together fought Britain in the American Revolution. Now, I know that some people believe that it was only we, with some help from the French, who fought Britain during the Revolutionary War, but we had other allies as well, allies that weren't quite as well, let's say, weren't so well defined or didn't make such a big splash on the scene that helped us. As we entered into a time where it looked like we were going to have a war with Britain, the great, again, Earl of Chatham, William Pitt, warned the Parliament that if they went to war against us, they would go to war against all of their European rivals, as their rivals would be happy to assist us to defeat England. And this picture depicts that. So, of course, we are the snake, and we are, in these cartoons, always depicted by a snake. I think this is the only one I have tonight, but maybe I'll do a second part of this and I'll maybe show you more of the snake ones. We got the snake identity from something that Benjamin Franklin drew. You may have seen it. It's a snake. It's chopped up into segments, and the segments are labeled with the names or initials for the colonies. And it says, join or die, or unite or die. So the idea was that if we colonies united, we could be as deadly as the American rattlesnake. And if we didn't, we would die as cut up pieces or cut up segments. So the snake became a part of our regular appearance. Let me look at something here in just a moment. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. So the snake came to represent the colonies in many political cartoons during the Revolutionary War. So here we are, and of course the rooster is France. Up on the top is a spaniel representing Spain, and on the bottom is a pug dog representing Holland. Now, occasionally in these cartoons, you might see Holland represented as the Dutch represented as a two-headed dog. The idea that they were playing both sides, that they were pretending neutrality while they were still assisting us. So here we have the British lion engaging four powers. In other words, that they're not fighting only us, they're fighting their other rivals at the same time. And here we are, poor old Britain, trying to discipline her unruly colonies. And here we have Britain as an old man missing half of a leg. And across the Atlantic, he's trying to rein in his colonies. And you can see how badly behaved we're depicted here, right? Someone is showing their butt. People are sticking out their tongues. Somebody's raising their hat. Somebody is blowing a dart. So very, very bad behavior on our part, but showing that Britain is an old, weak man, and the colonies are young, strong, and defiant. So there's the old man Britain engaging his defiant children. Oh, and a really good one here. This is the brothers Howe on how to get rich. And so sitting at the table, we have General William Howe and Lord Admiral Richard Howe, who you might remember were the commanders at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, right? Lord Howe commanded the Navy, and William Howe, or Sir Howe, commanded the army. In the middle is a devil. And they're talking about how to make money on the war. And all of this little dialogue is all a play on words on the word how. Oh, how can we do it? How? Things like that. And in the background, back here, back here is just a cabbage farmer and some British ships off in the distance. So the idea is that these gentlemen are talking to the devil on how they can get rich on the war in America. And all there is in America is cabbage farmers. What is there to get rich on? So there were ways that the commanders did get wealthy on the war. And that is one of the ways was the number of battles they participated in. So the more battles you participated in, the more pay you received and the higher your pension might be at the end. So we had a number of instances where here in New York, the British were stalling and someone complained, that what is General Howe doing, sending Henry Clinton to New England to fight a battle against old women and priests. In other words, he's sending him off to New England, to Connecticut it was, to fight against old ladies and priests. That's all that's left in the town because it looks like a battle and it racks up battle victories for them. So here we have a bit of an anti-war look, isn't it? The brothers Howe on how to profit or get rich on the war. Did the general fashion change with the season or just the outer garments? Everything changed regularly by decade. The foundation garments changed, the desired shape of one's body changed, the hairstyles changed, the outer garments changed, the footwear changed, everything changed. So this hair would have been popular in the 1770s, although I'm pretending it's the 1780s. I don't have on my 1780s hair. This would have been very popular in the 1770s. By the 1780s, it's a fuller, more curly look. Something called the hedgehog. You might have seen me wear that big curly wig I have with the long ponytails in the back. And then in the 1790s, it's a more natural look for hair. So every decade, the hair changes, the clothes change, the colors change, making sure that ladies can just keep buying new things and keep up with fashion. Now, we do remake a lot of our clothes when those ideas change. So we might take a jacket like this and have it disassembled and made into something different, the bodice of a new dress, or perhaps a jacket with a different shape. And that happens quite often because the prices of all the fabrics are quite high. So there's a lot of remaking of garments for different decades as the shapes and the styles and fashions change. Someone, Will Linden asked, is that man modeled after the king? And I think I'm a little bit ahead. Oh, the old man with the pegged leg. I think that man is just Britain, just showing that Britain is old and has seen its younger days, is past its prime, is now an old and fading man, while the colonies are young, defiant, strong, and assertive. So I think that's what it's showing. Well, we do have one coming up that shows the king, though. A couple coming up with the king, I think. Let me see. What do we have next? Howe brothers. Oh, dude, I missed the horse America. I did. I missed one I wanted to show you. Let me see if I have it. Give me a minute here because I think I forgot one. Here it is. I'd like to show you this one, speaking of the king. Lord Howe and his sister Caroline helped Dr. Franklin devise a path for reconciliation, but to no avail. That is absolutely true. Catherine Howe was a brilliant and very respectable woman who played chess, among other things, with Mr. Franklin, and they tried very hard to find a path of reconciliation, but there truly was none. The Howe brothers themselves, you might know, in the early part of the war, did delay a number of times in order to reach a reconciliation with the colonies and not go into full all-out warfare and kill too many people. And they tried that for about the first year, and that was not successful either. I think by that time we were past any reconciliation, that things had become so terrible between our two countries that it was inevitable that our tie would be severed. So here we have the horse America throwing his master. So the horse is America, and you can see on the horse is the king. And the king, notice at the end of his whip are tools of war, a hatchet, various types of swords, um, bayonets, tools of destruction, tools of death at the end of his whip that he's hitting the horse with. Now this goes back to, again, William Pitt, Lord Chatham, Earl of Chatham, who warned the Parliament that by using the technique of force, weapons, muskets, bayonets, and the threat of death against us would do nothing more than turn us further against them. The tools of war ought to be put away, that they ought to withdraw the troops from America and instead move forward in a spirit of reconciliation to fix our disagreements. Because he said, if you use the weapons like this, they'll never believe you that you truly want to negotiate. They'll believe you're only trying to trap them into a position where you can then dominate them by force and warfare. And therefore, you should put away the weapons of warfare and greet them as subjects of the crown with kindness, with honesty, and bring them into the fold and look for a reconciliation. So this is based on that the fact that the king is using force against us, we, the horse America, are throwing him out of the saddle. And in the background here is France coming up in the background, ready to aid us. There was fear and speculation from the beginning that France would be an ally of ours. So you see, the Frenchman is coming up in the back there. This is a very good one, the horse America. All right, what did I want next? Oh, that one, I thought I wanted that one last. Oh, no, I don't. Okay. So here is one. I have to make sure Mr. Q isn't here anywhere. Mr. Q will be very unhappy that I showed you this tonight. Very unladylike, but it is extremely funny. The General P or peace. So I think you can guess what the letters are in between the P and the S here. And this is the end of the war. And it is a piece about how unhappy people are with the reconciliation, right? That it's a general peace. And here are all the belligerents now, all having a good pea into a pot together. And it's really quite funny. I have what they're saying written down here for you because I really wanted to go over this whole cartoon because it's quite funny. So we have we have 5 men, an Englishman, a Dutchman, and a Native American, a Spaniard and a Frenchman. And of course, you can see they're all relieving themselves into the pot. The Englishman is saying, say what they will, I call this an honorable P dot dot dot. The native says, I call this a free and independent P dot dot dot. And the Frenchman says, Jack English, we confess your exceeding good nature. Though we have wrangled you out of America, you freely make P with us. So in other words, even though we got your colonies away from you, we are so honored at your good nature that you would still take this P with us. And there are 5 swords, 2 drums, and flags of the representative nations on the ground. Now, on the bottom are 16 lines of verse that I would also like to read to you because they are quite funny. So the idea, of course, is that the war was all for nothing. These guys are all having a pea together in a pot, and we spent millions for what? And so on the bottom it says, come all who love friendship and wonder and see, the belligerent powers like good neighbors agree. A little time passed, sirs, who would have thought this, that they so soon come to a general. The wise politicians who differ in thought will fret at this friendship and call it to naught. And blades that love war will be storming at this, but storm as they will, it's a general. 100 hard millions in war we have spent, and America lost by all patriots' consent. Yet let us be quiet, nor anyone hiss. but rejoice at this hearty and general. 'Tis vain for to fret or growl to our lot. You see they're determined to fill up a pot. So now, my brave Britons, excuse me in this, that I for peace am obliged to write. Yes, is this great? This is so wonderful. We spent all of this money for nothing. All the belligerents are happy together now. It's as if nothing happened. Everybody, we're all friends. For what? So because of that, I am forced to write this terrible poem. So this is really wonderful. And I have one more post-war to show you. And here we have, who do we have here? Is this the Tinkers? It is. The State Tinkers. This is showing the government fixing a cook's pot and putting more holes in it rather than filling the holes that are there. And I'll tell you some more of the details of what's in here, because I think this is kind of a general commentary on government. So the State Tinkers, you see three men, are fixing a large bowl that is cracked and patched up. Chiseling inside the pot is Lord North, the prime minister during the war, and he's chiseling in the bowl. Behind the bowl is the Lord Sandwich and Lord Germain. So those are the two guys in back, two lords in the House of Lords. And behind Lord North is George III. He's the guy there with his hands up like this, looking all surprised, like he can't believe they can't fix it, right? And the poem on the bottom says, "The national kettle, which once was a good one, for boiling of mutton, of beef, and for pudding, by the fault of the cook was quite out of repair, when tinkers were sent for, behold them and stare. The master, he thinks they are wonderful clever, and cries out in raptures, 'Tis done, now or never. Yet sneering the tinkers their old trade pursue, in stopping of one hole, they're sure to make two." Is that great? And that, I think, sums up our idea about government, right? You call the members of government. So here is Lord North, and there's Sandwich and Germain in the back, and there's the king right here, all excited, thinking that these guys are really going to fix everything, and all they're doing is making more holes in the pot, and they're just making everything worse because they're just not capable of fixing anything. So just a general comment on government: when you call the state tinkers to fix anything, you wind up with more of a mess. And unfortunately, I think that's probably true in your time as well. It's kind of true in our time, even though it's after the war, we kind of have gone back to this to some degree in some ways, not as bad as it was at the time we were under the rule of Parliament, but we still have some bad things going on like this, which is inevitable, I think, when you have government of any kind, right? What did Thomas Paine say about government? Remember back in 1776, he said government of any kind is, a bad thing, but you need some, and you need to make an agreement that you'll give the government some money in order for them to do things you need done, and that it needs to be an even process, that what you pay for, you get. And he said at one point that if you are living as though you have no government, but you're paying for a government, you're paying for your own misery. And I think that Mr. Madison will write that in one of his Federalist papers that you may know is coming out in a few years. Federalist number 51, If Men Were Angels, right? If men were angels, we wouldn't need government, but they're not. And we know the worst people are always drawn to government, so we need to find ways to restrict them and control what they do. So a continuous idea about some government being necessary, but government almost inevitably becomes a bad thing. Oh, I have a whole bunch of comments. Oh, Miss Selda, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for watching. That's Linda. A necessary evil, and men are not angels indeed. Indeed. We have quite a bit of debate going on in New York City at this time about our future government and what sort of people should be in that government. And maybe you know that we recently had a handbill come out saying that no one should elect lawyers to serve in any government, that lawyers make everything too confusing, obtuse, complex, so that they are then the only ones who can understand it, and that it will always be made to benefit themselves over the people. And this was a really big one about, it said, elect no lawyers to the New York Assembly, as we have elections for our local government, our New York Assembly. Elect no lawyers, that lawyers are too scheming, conniving, and dangerous and should never be elected to serve in the government. Yes, Germain was Secretary of State for America and the man who actually was in charge of the war. Lord Germain, by the way, was a very smart gentleman, and he knew that the war had to be won quickly, and planned in the year 1776 that incredible assault on the city of New York, which was meant to draw General Washington into New York City, Manhattan Island, surround him. Lord Germain went to great expense to deploy the largest naval deployment in Britain's history, plus not only a massive amount of British soldiers, but also Hessian mercenaries into New York to stop Washington here. The idea was Washington would move on to the island. They would surround the island with naval and army and destroy his army on the island in 1776. And through a series of mishaps on the part of General Howe, and a few bad decisions and delays, and of course, an attempt to have an armistice, which fell through, the British took the island, but Washington's army evacuated the island and went into the interior. One of the things Lord Germain was worried about, of course, was the cost of a long engagement with the colonies. And he feared that if the army moved to the interior, they would have a long engagement, because he said the British weren't that familiar with the interior of the colonies. Their power was naval power, and it was based along the shore where their big cities and ports were. So Germain rightly was concerned that if Washington's army escaped far into the interior, it would be very difficult to defeat them, which turned out to be true. Now, Germain, angry, at one point blamed the brothers Howe for their poor decisions in New York for losing the war. This caused, I think, the brothers to go back to England and, I think, sue him, or at least ask for a hearing in the House of Lords to restore their good name. So this became a big issue in England, that he placed the blame on them and them wanting to clear their name as gentlemen. And I think their name was cleared. So yes, Germain, very intelligent man, had a good strategy for New York, but unfortunately it wasn't properly executed by his two commanders. And here we are now, free of England. Let's see. Thought on Lord North's resignation being denied over and over again by King George. North was really not the kind of prime minister who was suitable for being a wartime prime minister. North really was, a politician. He was a what would we call a backroom politician, you might call him in your time. He was very good at parties, social engagements, making deals, things like that. But when it came to really being an assertive leader at a time when the Parliament, you may know, was very, very divided. The gentlemen there were not united on their view in the colonies. They were not united on the Stamp Act or the Quartering Act, and they certainly weren't united on the Tea Act. And they were very divided over the idea of occupying Boston to punish them for the Boston Tea Party, as it's called. So at a time when the Parliament really needed strong leadership, North really was not the person for that. He did, though, have a very good sense of humor. There is a story that Lord North was at a social engagement and that a gentleman walked up to him and said, "Why, North, who is that ugly woman over there?" And that North looked at him and said, "Why, sir, that woman is my wife, and we are indeed the ugliest couple in all of London." So at least North had a good sense of humor, but he really was in a position for which he wasn't suited. And I'm really not sure why the king refused his resignation. The king would have been better served. Maybe he was afraid that otherwise he would get a Whig prime minister who would be much more sympathetic to the colonies and looking for some sort of armistice rather than a definitive victory, which some people knew in England they were not going to get. Oh, the corruptible, yes. So I hope you all have enjoyed your time with me tonight. I didn't plan to talk for a whole hour, so this was really wonderful. Thank you so much for supporting me here. Also, you can support me by subscribing to my channel and watching my videos, so that helps me out. And also, just support my work. That's all I can ask you to do. And thank you for doing it. And I will be with you again next Thursday night, more history with Mrs. Q. And thank you so much for your time. I very much appreciate it. It's great to be back. Have a wonderful night and a good week ahead.